Hello? Hello?
Sir, proceed, sir. You are audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I hope I'm audible.
Sir.
I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
Very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a very good afternoon to one and all. So today's event is the webinar which we are going to have from Mr. Leo Peter Charles, Jane Aerospace. And before this, I'd just like to welcome each one of the participants and also the speaker, our HOD, and the other core committee members to this webinar. Also, I wish to mention the importance of Aero Club in BMS IT and also the importance of aerospace and aero programs in future. Right. I'd just like to mention that in 2017, March 17th, the Aero Club was started off by a team of 5 core committee members of the 5th semester students at that time. So then it took off very well and people were interested and they joined in large numbers. We did a lot of workshops, 2-3 workshops on drone building. We flew some drones on unmanned aircrafts. We also could fly them in our grounds, in our college grounds itself. We got a lot of motivation from the management to elevate the Aero Club to a higher level. They gave us funds and also the students were very much interested in going to other places like IIT Kanpur, IIT Kharagpur, etc., where they gave a lot of the drones performed well there and they could win some prizes also. So it went off quite well until the lockdown began. Okay, now we're just waiting for the lockdown to be over so that we can get back to all our Aero Club activities. Okay, this is just a brief about the Aero Club. And of course, our Department of Mechanical Engineering, our HOD, Dr. K.M. Satish Kumar has always been behind us. Principal, of course, has been the backbone for all the support that we are getting to elevate the Aero Club at the institution level. The speaker for today's function is Mr. Leo Peter Charles. And I would just like to give a brief description about his biodata or his achievements, what he has done. So he's an avid aero modeler and a drone platform evangelist. He has a bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering from MBJ College of Engineering, Bangalore. He also is an entrepreneur and he has the experience of having startup in IT, hobby-related and UAV training industry. He has trained more than 5,000 students and also he has for the drone industry, around 15 plus companies are calling various students who are trained under him for employment. Now he's an aerospace consultant for various academic institutions like VIT Bhopal, MBJ College, Agni College of Technology, etc. JMA's first project was the CEO of Garuda Aerospace Private Limited, and recently he has just put a lot of effort in Garuda Aerospace and come out of the journey. And also, they have assisted NDRF in the Uttarakhand glacier disaster site. If Leo Peter Charles, he formed Jane Aerospace in 2019, and it is a massive ecosystem support because now the drone ecosystem requires to be built. And he has worked tirelessly to raise the awareness and to provide infrastructure support. Even during COVID times, we have seen they have done a lot of work which is going to help the COVID victims. So JMA has so far conducted more than 200 workshops and a lot of webinars and seminars. And 61 drone pilots have been trained under him and they're in top drone companies in pan-India. Okay, so with this kind of introduction of Mr. Leo Peter Charles, I would request our HOD, Dr. K.M. Satish Kumar, to just speak a few words before we start off.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Madhu, for your wonderful introduction about the Aero Club and the speaker of today's function. So I like to welcome the speaker for today's function, Leo Peter Charles, and our respected principal sir is also joined. So before I start, I just like to welcome principal sir. Sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon to you all. Go ahead. Wonderful.
Sir, before I just proceed, I just request you to just start the thing, sir. Please share a few words to our enthusiastic audience. Then I will.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Yes.
Please, sir.
I only say 3 words. All the best. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your the words. So, let me just thank our the core committee members of the Aero Club. So even though the Aero Club has started at the 5 years, now we plan to extend it to the larger scale, and we have formed a core committee also to took up the initiation of what we have started earlier. Just to give the members, first of all, I like to welcome all the members over here for this a very much required talk on how COVID-19 is driving drone innovation. So as we know that there is a very unprecedented changes which has occurred now. The impact on the society due to this COVID-19 has changed everything now, and along with that, the one of the industry which has also helped, which has also taken a shape is the drone, where we can able to understand that the drones are definitely playing a significant role in fight against this the coronavirus, maybe in terms of surveillance or enforcement of the lockdown, or public broadcast systeming also been implemented. And I heard that in New Delhi, they implemented cameras to track or to monitor the body temperature in the crowded places, and medical and emergency food supplies, which is already been there, and spraying disinfectants like that. There are many new avenues with which this drone has come up. The drone industry has come up to help this pandemic. So in this definite pandemic, now we will be having a very good speaker with us. So MD and the founder of JMA Aerospace Limited, who is always helpful to us in all our activities of the Aero Club. He has started off actually, and we have done a good workshop with him. And one workshop we thought already it has got approved by the principal sir long ago. So to almost 2.5 years over, he has approved, but we could not able to take it up because it requires the presence of the students in the campus. So hopefully that's going to take a shape early. So with this brief introduction and with this brief highlights about the thing, so I kindly request Mr. Leo Peter Charles to throw the students all the avenues and all the fascinating industry of drone over to the drone expert Leo Peter Charles for the further proceedings.
Thank you so much, sir. It has always been a pleasure working with BMSIT. I remember when club started, then I had come and then spoken to Madhu sir and Dean sir and the principal sir. It's really a very nice journey to be part of, and the Aero Club has indeed done a lot of things right from the start. It was fun teaching the students, building drones with them, and then even guiding few of them to competitions. So that way, it's been a tremendous journey, and I think even after this entire pandemic, the Aero Club will move on with more vigor and will expand. I hope for that, and I promise that I will always be there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity as well. Yes, sir. We will go ahead with the presentation. I will not. I think all of them are eagerly waiting. Praveen, can you shift to the presentation? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So we are there. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this presentation. This is part of our JMA ecosystem support endeavor program, where we are using this time in the lockdown to create awareness about the vast potential that drones have. We've been seeing them, we've been reading about them in news of late, and they've really caught the public's imagination, right? And that way they've been doing phenomenal work, and I've been privileged to be part of this drone industry for some time, and then I had the opportunity to work with governments during the first lockdown that happened last year, and others, creating other support system post the unlockdown. And then now I've been consulting with organizations to help them use drones for various activities currently during lockdowns in various stages at in different states of India. And truly, whatever misfortune the pandemic has brought us, it has definitely brought in a ray of hope to a lot of technology companies in how they could immediately scale, innovate, and enterprise technology for the use of common public. And that way, drones have also derived benefit from this. The picture right here that you see is actually what we shot in Odisha during the previous lockdown last year, where we were using drones for sanitization purpose. So we tried a lot of things with drones to make it easier for the administration to handle the entire lockdown. And governments really woke up to what drones could really do, and it has been all uphill from there, where we've been accomplishing a lot of different applications and benefits using drones. So we will see a glimpse of it. My only aim with this presentation, one, is to share whatever knowledge I have about drones and how it helped during COVID. Second is, if I could bring about that eureka moment in any one of you that could literally help this country during this pandemic using drones, I feel putting all this time and effort into this presentation would definitely is worth, right? So let's dive in, and we will take questions at the end of the presentation. You can always note it down, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions once I come to the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So they've done my introduction. So I think very few people in this country gets to tell that their passion, hobby, and business is the same. So for me, it is drones. I live and breathe drones. So I've been building them right from when I was in college, way back in 2010. So a decade in the drone segment. Initially, what started off as a hobby grew bigger and then became my business, the business model that I built around it. And it's a very unique thing that we did with JMA Aerospace, which I will talk later. And apart from that, I believe this is the next big, like the industrial revolution, like the .com revolution, like the fintech revolution that's happening. Drone is also a very revolutionary technology that will literally help this country come out of different challenges, be it social, be it economical. I believe this has the power to create large-scale employment. It has the power to create multiple startups in various segments. And also, it has the power to make people's life more easier, right? Like how the mobile phones did, like how computers did. Drones also have this potential. So I was having a chat with my teammate here in Mysore, and fortunately my birthday was on May 17th, and then I was telling him we should have drones come and deliver cakes, right? And even at homes, maybe you could just have drones distributing cakes to everybody. It's just a very wild idea. And then he was laughing. So the best part is, I always say this, drone application is limited by human imagination. People could think of so many things during the lockdown that it actually happened, which were not even in the mainstream thought process before. And that is one thing that the pandemic did. And after that, so that has been one thing. And I was the CEO of Garuda Aerospace for a period of almost 9 to 10 months. And then we did phenomenal things there. And that is when I had better realization that drones could really push it to various segments, right? Be it disaster management, be it in the service of the Coast Guard, or be it in agriculture, be it in inspections, things that would have been very costly, very time consuming, or would have been really dangerous for people to do. Drones could actually do that. And we also saw that what governments really thought about drones, and then how Swamvitva happened, where the Ministry of Panchayat Raj and the Survey of India came together and said, okay, let's map all the 6.6 lakh villages in India, and then let's do it with drone. That became like a very huge thing. What was in talks for almost a year and a half became reality last year, and that way that has given a large impetus for drones in India, for manufacturing and for service providers. So the one statement that I make about myself, I'm extremely curious about drones, and that's how I've been able to see drones from a very different perspective, and not merely in the terms of profits and losses. So that's me. And enough about me. Let's dive into the topic. Next slide, please. So these are what I will be covering. We'll talk about there are a few common slides that I use everywhere, so that everybody registers what exactly the technology is. And after that, we will talk about the topic at hand, and then I'll talk a few things about my organization and the pilot program that we run, because that's the need of the hour, and then the Flight 100 program that we are envisioning, where we will be creating 100 entrepreneurs in the drone industry and helping them overall to build drones or applications for different use cases in India. Right? Next slide, please. So what are drones? This is a very important question to answer, because everybody thinks drones are those vehicles that fly which have 4 rotors, and then that's the most common thing that you would have seen at weddings, right? So drones are anything that is unmanned, controlled remotely. It can be on ground, it can be on the surface of water, or as a submersible, or it can be in the air. Now it can even be in space, right? So that way, you have UAVs, you have UGVs, you have unmanned aquatic vehicles and unmanned submersibles. So all of these are drones, because predominantly the concept of how they are controlled and how they operate is same. We operate in the UAV segment, right? These are unmanned aerial vehicles, drones that fly. There's the drone, there's the ground station with the pilot, and then you have a command and control link through which information is passed to the drone and from the drone. This is what predominantly is the UAV. There might be different applications. The drone might have different capabilities. That's all different. But then in its basic nature, this is what a UAV is. It has multiple applications. Initially in India, it started off with military application, and then when we bought Searcher and all from Israeli aerospace industries, and then later moved into cinematography, photography, hobby photography, and now we've seen innumerable applications. So I was reading somewhere, and I was shocked to know that drones have more than 200 applications today in which they operate. Next slide. This is like a very small history. You would be astonished to know drones go way back to 1849. So you might be asking me, how is that even possible? So the first record in human history that we see is when Austrians used balloons. This is a very primitive concept where they used balloons to which bombs were tied, and they were trying to attack Venice by opening the basket and then dropping the bomb. So these are more of tethered control, but then the balloons it is said that the balloons, instead of going to Venice, came back to Austria because of the wind direction. You could not control them. But that is when it all started. And then both the world wars have given destruction and a lot of technology. We see in World War One, where the British started using drones for target practice. They were like basically rocket powered drones that would take off, and then you would have huge radio control setups that would try to control these drones. When I say huge, it would be as big as your computer table or something. So that is when they started realizing that it could be used for more. And then we see major development happen in the US, where they built the Curtiss N2C2 drone for use, and then that was in testing phase. And later that went into building your Predator and the RQ2 and all of those drones. Right? And Israel has been a pioneer in military drone tech. And in 1986, they built the RQ2 Pioneer along with the US, because Israel's major military aid comes from the United States. And that was where in its full entity, that they could build a drone with reconnaissance cameras, and then you had satellite communication and all of that. Fast forward 1990, 2000, I think every military movie today is not made without drones. And they have been using it in a lot of places. Even during the recent Israel-Palestine conflict that ended in a ceasefire yesterday, the Hamas did use drones to drop bombs on the on the Israel side, and the Iron Dome did take it out. So drones are now part of all modern warfare. Apart from that, they are a major part in the commercial segment as well. This is a very brief, but I urge and request all of you to, if dedicate some time and go through the entire history, because every other country has its own independent history of developing drones. Next slide, please. So these are the different type of drones. Some of them you might have seen, some of them you may not have. The most common type before the multi-rotor came was the fixed wing configuration that looked like an aeroplane, which had longer range, better endurance because of the glide factor and lift being produced on the wings. So that was always there. It could always operate at an optimal power. And then we see rotary wing. Rotary wing, you have two divisions. One is the single rotor helicopter variant, and then you have multi-rotors. Apart from the tricopter, the three rotor variant, every other multi-rotor comes in even numbers of rotors, just to have equilibrium in terms of cancelling out couples, right? Now, everything has their own advantage and disadvantage. What you see in the fixed wing, single rotor, and the multi-rotor, these are the basic forms of drone configurations. The fixed wing has longer range, as I said earlier, but then needs a runway or a catapult to be launched or hand launched. But whereas the rotary wing can do vertical takeoff and landing, and that's the best part of it. You don't need a longer runway or need a length of clear space for it to take off. If you have clear space, the size of the drone is more than sufficient for it to take off. Multi-rotors again came in, which were more stable than the single rotor helicopters. But the problem was, if something went wrong, multi-rotors would become falling bricks, right? They would be like a stone in the sky. Whereas the fixed wing, you will still be able to glide and recover it at some point of time. But with this, the challenge, somebody saw, okay, let's put multi-rotor and fixed wing together, and then they brought in the hybrid VTOL concept, where the drone takes off vertically like a multi-rotor, but then flies in the fixed wing configuration, which took care of not needing a runway and also having a better endurance than multi-rotors. Now, the ornithopter is something that you would have seen in the movie Uri. Is a drone that mimics a bird. It flies like a bird by flapping its wings. The drone that you see in the image is used to, on large-scale farms to scare away birds. Also is used in the airports for again scaring away birds so that the aircraft doesn't have a bird strike. And the aerostat is a balloon filled with helium. It can stay up for very long duration. So when you couple power systems to it and then have a very good camera or electro-optic payload with both infrared and night vision, you can do surveillance, right? A very good place to put this is during a match or at the borders or at locations where constant surveillance is required. So these are predominantly the type of drones that are in use today. Next slide, please. So what did COVID do to drones? That's the most important aspect. So I would like to tell you about my experience. When the first lockdown happened, nobody knew what to do, right? Even the government only knew the lockdown is going to happen. Everything was to be evolved. How things will get delivered. How do you maintain containment zones where you have a large number of COVID positive cases? How do you deliver something into the containment zone? How do you check people's temperature? How do you ensure people are maintaining social distance? How do you ensure all of them are wearing masks? All this becomes a challenge. So the only way that was available was to do it manually, right? Police and other government frontline workers would go into these places and then check and then maintain law and order, and then all those aspects are there. But the problem is, once you start sending in people who are healthy into containment zones, there is always the chance of them catching the virus. And that is where drone companies really stepped in. The first thing that would start was sanitization, because people understood that any such outbreaks happen, the first thing BBMP or any municipal corporation has to do is to come with sodium hypochlorite or bleaching powder and then put it in front of the house. So that's one thing that started. And then there was news of COVID. First they said COVID won't be airborne, then they said COVID will be airborne, and then now we have more than 100 studies that say COVID is airborne at least up to more than 6 or 7 feet or even 10 feet. It's on the Lancet. I exactly don't know that number, but then they've confirmed it's airborne. Now, so it started with using drones for sanitization at places where people would gather early in the morning, like markets and in front of grocery stores and retail marts and all of that, right? So those places started happening. Now, what was so good about drones being used for sanitization? The other only method that they were employing was either filling fire trucks or other tankers and then just flooding the street with chemical, right? So this way, we had a more efficient way to spread sodium hypochlorite or any other disinfectant that did not literally flood the street, and then it was very effective in the spread reaching, right? So that happened, and after that, announcements had to be made by the government. Now, there is always the centralized announcement that comes from the government through the news channels and other agencies. But then there is always, and also there are localized announcements that happen through the local police station or through the local public health center, right? Somebody is coming, let's say at some containment zones, they are coming to do en masse testing, right? So these cannot happen through a centralized agency. This has to happen locally. Now, how was this happening? You basically had auto rickshaws with speakers tied to them, and then these auto rickshaws were moving inside. That is a little dangerous because there's one person announcing, or there's one person taking care of the public announcement system, and then there's the auto rickshaw driver who's driving it. They're always susceptible to pick up the virus anywhere. Maybe somebody comes and talks to them out of curiosity and all of that, right? So then the police department said, okay, can drones do something? And then we put a speaker to the drone, and we were outside the containment zone, and then we flew the drone into the containment zone where we started making announcements, and then we had a camera attached to it. And they could see. So these innovations all started. Drone delivery started, and then there were other challenge statements that were cropping up, and we were trying to address all of that. So all of this were purely enabled by COVID-19 and the lockdown that followed that. So it made people think faster as to what needs to be done at that point of time. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. When crisis strikes, I think technocrats work best to create solutions. So that's what COVID did. And then let's see more about that. Next slide, please. So these are few of the companies in India and abroad that work towards it. These are only few. There are innumerable. We couldn't put everything on the page. Few of them did surveillance, few of them did public announcement, few of them did sanitization, few of them did temperature monitoring, then surveillance in reserve forests. All of this happened, and few of these companies worked and then are still working for various governments in India and abroad, helping the government through this crisis. Next slide. So these are few of the applications. The first one that we see is medical drone delivery, where drones were used to send out essential medicines, be it immediate vaccines or be it life-saving drugs to treat the symptoms or conditions that evolved out of COVID infection, right? And in countries like Rwanda, Uganda, the Democratic People's Republic of Congo, and Tanzania, in the African countries where roads are really bad and people to save lives, or doctors wanted medicines to save lives, what would generally take 6-7 hours can easily be accomplished by drones in 2 or 2.5 hours. Because they're flying in straight lines and then they're flying really fast, right? Otherwise, going by roads or through bad muddy roads and then across mountains and all of that, that would always take time. And drones did that. The second thing that drones did is situational awareness. Now, what exactly is this? Now, when the curfew and lockdown was imposed, the police needed to know if the lockdown protocols were actually followed, right? Now, are people gathering in place? Are they maintaining social distance? Are they wearing a mask? And what would be their temperature? And are they moving out unnecessarily? All of this needed to be monitored. If you can't put one police vehicle in every lane, it doesn't work that way. And then if you also remember, most of these lanes were barricaded, right? So even actual mobility through vehicles was limited in these locations. But for drones, this was never the problem because we were always flying above the buildings. And with high resolution camera, with zoom capability, and with HD transmission being possible, you could actually stand at the police station and deploy these drones and see where these are happening. And with the capability of also doing public announcement, we could actually warn people. And if there was really people not listening, you could always take a picture of them. And people were also drone companies were also working on AI models where you could identify people, right? Apart from that, if people really did not know, you just send some vehicle there. You don't have to lower your window. Nothing had to be done. Just police going there and then switching on the siren, people would run away. So this was possible, and you could cover a large area of land that was there. And then we also see public announcement, as I said. Apart from that, spraying streets with disinfectant, and at some places we did do water to solve the dust crisis and all of that. Where we would take off, like in few of the markets, what we did is we took off on the paved road and then would go on the muddy ground and then spray water and all of that. We've done that as well, so that the dust would not rise afterwards. And after that, we also did body temperature scanning. You have thermal cameras that are radiometric in nature. You point at somebody or point at an object, it will tell you the temperature plus or minus a few degrees. That also depends on the camera and then how close you are to the subject. This also helped in tracking large use cases. Multiple companies in India and abroad built algorithms to evolve this process and see how we could do it real time. And then if somebody was having high temperature, how we could help them immediately. Now, these are core use cases. There are other use cases that rose because of COVID. Now, the first problem was in agriculture. If you remember, there was a large reverse migration of laborers that had come from other states to South India to their hometowns. A lot of them even walked back, right? Now, what did this do to agriculture? Created a very high deficiency of farm labor, and because of which farmers were really struggling. So what we did, we deployed drones for spraying pesticides. We deployed drones to assess crop health so that the yield could be better. We were not facing a food security crisis in the country because food kits were being given out. And if farm produce lowered, that would become a very big challenge, and starvation would become a problem because the virus can only be fought by your immune system. Even the vaccination they are giving to you today is deactivated virus, right? They've removed the outer covering and that's what's being injected into you. Now the deactivated virus will have to create antibodies for your body and your white blood cells. To create antibodies, you need to eat and be healthy, right? For that, food is very important. And now if that itself becomes a problem, we will have a multifold crisis in our country. And drones played a very huge part in helping farmers in both spraying and then crop analytics. Then we also did hospital survey and construction site survey, so that what happened is now a lot of construction sites, everything was left at the site and people went. So we don't know what was there and what is not there. So drones could do multiple construction sites in the same day and then send back data to the main corporate office where they could actually monitor what was left. Using AI platforms and AI algorithms, people could the software could actually pinpoint. So this is where the sand is. This is where the cements are stored. This is where the iron rods are stored. This is what are the infrastructure that is there at the construction site. This is what the progress is. So this could be done very fast, right? It would take you less than an hour or so, or 2 hours, depending on the size of the construction site anyways, to get this entire data and then take it forward. So that way, that was possible. Inspection of industrial infrastructure. Now, what happened is companies were shut down for quite a good amount of time. And because of that, a lot of infrastructure went unused. And before companies could fully start or before companies could continue their operations, they needed to know if their infrastructure is in good condition. Now, the other dual problem, you need to analyze this as well. Companies that were shut down for a longer time cannot now shut down again for inspection. They had to do inspection real time or within short spans of time. That's where Godrej reached out to us when I was in Garuda Aerospace and said, we have about 100 factories in India, and all of them have chimneys and boilers, overhead water tanks, stacks, and all of silos and all of that. And then we need that inspected. But conventional method can only do it in such fast way. It would take minimum of 3 to 4 days. Minimum 3-4 days. The average was a week, and then it would cost a lot. It would cost in lakhs, right? We did that in under a day. At some places, the maximum we stretched was 2 days, where the second day we only needed 2 hours of the factory's time. So that way we could bring down the cost, bring down the downtime of the factory, and then provide them better, accurate results. That also helped companies run their factories better, but not spending a lot, and also not making losses because of the downtime. And logistics delivery again happened, and then we also had drones use for other scientific purposes to carry out weather and all of that stuff. So surveillance also happened for detecting forest fires and in poaching in at forests. So these are few of the use cases. Let us see one of each of them in detail. Next slide, please. So this is one of the use case, very interesting how in China they used QR code for previous slide. Yeah, QR codes to understand where people were moving. So these drones used to hold up these QR codes, and people entering the city had to scan them so that the government knew who's coming into the city and who's leaving the city. And you did not have to open your window to scan this, right? And that way it was better. They used to deploy these drones at toll booths where they could scan and then say, okay, I'm entering the city. Next, Prajwal. So you can play the video and then I will. So that was spraying in the UAE, where they used drones for spraying. That happened in India as well. This is just a sample clip of that, where drones could fly at a really greater height, and then that mist could cover a large area of land. This was initially done recently. Also, it was done around hospitals and places where people used to gather a lot. In India, we have the problem of spitting in public places, and sanitization is definitely required. Now, with the aggravated problem of the black fungus issue, also sanitization becomes very relevant, because everybody recovering from COVID, and then more so over a diabetic patient recovering from COVID, is affected by it, and you really have very limited time before it becomes fatal, right? That way, this is better. And also, since the mist is very fine, it's about 75 microns to 150 microns, it spreads very evenly, and the down thrust and the vortices created by the rotor helps spread the mist and not just spray downwards. So that's that's one of the use cases. Next slide. So this is a very interesting use case. We did this in India as well. This is in China, where a drone goes to every apartment and somebody has to come down and check, and they will check the temperature. So this way, what happens is public health officials don't really have to come knocking your door and then expose themselves in case somebody had the virus, right? This is also a very good use case, because temperature spikes would generally be seen, and then somebody can come, because it's even difficult to go next door and ask for help. Somebody who is trained to handle COVID patients will only have to come and help them. So this was another use case that was put to use. Next slide, please. So this is Zipline, very interesting. They did sample delivery for COVID testing, the company from the United States, mainly
Since
working
we started
in
operating our
Central
first system
Africa.
in Rwanda more than a year ago now, we've been designing our next generation system from the ground up, incorporating all that experience of that first operation. And so we've redesigned pretty much everything about the plane and our ground systems to support scaled operations. So instead of being able to do 50 flights a day, we want to be able to do 500 flights a day from a single distribution center. We pull the blood or the medical product for that order, put it in a package, put that package into a zip, and launch that zip.
Controller ready, airspace is clear, slight headwind.
The aircraft weighs 20 kilograms, about 45 pounds.
Copy, spinning motors and launching ziplane 138.
It's fully autonomous flight.
It has about a 10-foot wingspan, 3 meters, and it can carry about 3 pounds, 1.75 kilograms. The plane is measuring actively the wind speed and the direction. And so if the wind's blowing in a particular direction, it's going to compensate and drop that package so it lands on the ground right where you want it. We can hit an area about the size of 2 parking spots. It looks like kind of like a cake box with a paper parachute on top. A fixed-wing aircraft can fly dramatically farther than something like a quadcopter. And that's really important for what we do. It can fly faster, it can fly through heavier weather, and the approaches to things like safety are also much easier. On our aircraft, for example, we have multiple motors, right? The plane, if either one of those stops working, the plane flies just fine. We're in Rwanda today, and we're expanding to cover the other half of Rwanda as we speak, and next is Tanzania. From there, we are really focused on solving this problem, access to medical products at a global scale. There's access to medical product problems in the US and in the developing world, and we really want to solve all of those problems everywhere.
Prajwal, you can pause the video. So this is what Zipline did. And there are other companies as well. So we have Wingcopter, we have Rigid, a lot of companies. And in India also, there are about 20 drone consortiums that have been cleared from the Ministry of Civil Aviation to perform beyond visual line of sight flights for delivery. Now imagine the use case where vaccination, let's say doorstep vaccination has to happen with the existing vaccine. These are all need to be stored sub-zero temperatures, right? Now, if we could have drones with temperature controlled containers, ship vaccines to all villages, we could achieve, anyways, it still has its logistics challenges, I'm not denying that, but we could achieve large-scale vaccination throughout the country in a very, very short span of time. You can build inoculation guns. They are already available off the market, and then we have one of the largest health network of ASHA workers in all of the villages. So you teach them how to use that equipment to inoculate, and then you could just send out these vaccines across to villages, and then we could have large-scale vaccination done. So that's a real potential use case to actually solve this pandemic problem, right? I am really hoping it happens that way, rather than us all walking to a PHC and then standing in queue and getting those dosages, because even standing in queue is risky now. Next slide, please. So this is again drone delivery. Here you see a different type of drone, the VTOL hybrid.
Fly around 60 miles one trip. It can carry about 60 patient swabs to 80 patient swabs at any time, and it's been designed to fly in all weather conditions. It is fully rainproof. and it can fly in quite windy conditions. It was originally designed to operate in offshore wind farms.
So here they have been using drones again to collect test swabs from different locations. Britain has other islands from which they will need to pick up these test swabs so that it can be processed in the mainland. This way, it also helps nations which are a cluster of islands where logistics between islands to the mainland becomes a great challenge. Next. Next slide.
Dragonfly is honored and thrilled to have been piloting a project with Westport, Connecticut of the Dragonfly Health and Public Safety System. Dragonfly's public health and safety system uses standard 4K cameras to provide anonymized data on social distancing, heart rate, respiratory rate, and fever detection, all in the service of providing population health data to our public safety officials. The system does not collect individualized data. The system does not identify people. The system takes population samples and provides this anonymized data to our public safety officials so that we can have clear data giving us indication of population health and allowing our officials to make decisions based on real data. This system and our work with public safety officials is so important because never again do we want to be in a situation where we're having to make such drastic guesses for such tremendous decisions that affect not just human lives, but also the economy and the world population. These types of decisions can't be made in retrospect. They have to be made in real time. And with this type of data available to our public safety officials on basically creation of an early warning system for public health, then and only then are we going to be in a position to never have to be faced with this again. We have been pleasantly overwhelmed by the positive feedback and response from public safety agencies all over the country. Their response and concern for having real-time data on population health so that they can make effective decisions to protect the public is exactly what this technology was built for. Dragonfly is thrilled at the potential of this technology and the contribution it can make to the effort.
So this is another place where they're using AI and drones to understand if somebody is profusely coughing or somebody has breathing problem based on standard body postures and then postures of people who might be affected by COVID. Just a large data set to study, but then that's possible. So once you have a very powerful computer, AI algorithm backing it, and drones for capturing that data and then processing real time, it makes for an effective tool for government agencies to be able to understand how people are behaving at certain locations, and if that location is starting to spread or where that is, if that location is looking to have more patients with symptoms, and then that they could take appropriate calls based on that. Next slide, please.
Dragonfly's
So this is the public announcement.
巡查的话，我们是不定期的开展空中巡查的这个目的，主要是一个是这个是防御的一个重要手段之一，再一个就是对一些监控死角以外的一些区域的进行一个弥补。
Yeah, so here you see drones being used for public announcements. We've done that in India. Most of the states did deploy them, and there are a lot of companies who are working on that. These drones are very effective for use during large-scale gatherings, be it religious gatherings, political gatherings, or even events like concerts and all of that. You can always use these drones to make announcements when lakhs of people or tens of thousands of people are involved. So this way, these drones could also help keep the person making the announcement safe. That's the biggest advantage. And then you could cover a large area of city or land, and you could make that announcement more effective. Next slide, please.
Do it, don't do it again.
So this is Alphabet, a company in the US that makes drones. So they started doing book delivery and grocery deliveries for residents. And then that was a huge success. And then now US has opened up its FAA regulations for drone delivery. So this is another use case where people really do not have to go to the supermarket and crowd up or queue up. Rather, they could just on the press of a button on their Android or iOS phone get groceries to their houses delivered very fast. Next slide, please. So this is the Indian ecosystem. A lot of drone companies did pro bono work for the government just to show the prowess of what the drone technology could do. Companies like Marut, Garuda, General Aeronautics, Idea Forge, Sagar Defense, Asteria, Throttle, a lot of these companies came forward and then pitched different solutions to the government, and that was really fantastic. And because of that, today government is taking a stand to help these drone companies go a step forward in the BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight drone operations, where delivery will soon become possible. And recently, when the second wave hit, also drone companies stepped forward, and then they have been doing a lot of activity with various government departments that could actually ease handling of this lockdown, because this time it was not a central lockdown, it was various states that had to take the call, and that way each state had a different problem, and that was being solved to some extent by the drone companies. Next slide, please. So this is the most famous video that went on from the first lockdown itself. Please take a look. I always remember this video. We've seen this happen really also. So yeah, crowd control was majorly a success with drones, and we could monitor people who are wearing, who are crowding, and then who are not wearing masks and all of that. That was a very interesting application that came out of surveillance, which were generally being used for other more complex scenarios. Next slide, please.
ये लिख के आ रहा है 35 होल्ड करिए सब कुछ ये कैमरा मैंने
So this is another interesting use case that I talked to you about earlier. Next slide, please. Yeah, so those are the use cases. A few more things that I think will come up in the process of delivery would be, since the government is now sending out kits to various houses, those are all RT-PCR, but then unfortunately the current mutant is not detectable in the RT-PCR itself. So they might come out with some kits that could be delivered to potential houses where there might be COVID positive patients. So if you have large apartments, maybe moving the kit from the gate to different apartments balcony, that's a use case that can be thought of. Also maybe picking up groceries and then delivering, that is there. Temperature control, like how we saw, if drones could go and people could just come out to their balcony and then drones could scan the temperature. That way you would have large scale data to understand if somebody's fallen sick or not. And then you can do it multiple times in a week. That way you will have more accurate data, and even infection evolving pattern or the infection spread pattern across locations. And every other challenge, if we could think of a way, as I said, drone applications are limited by human imagination. If you have a problem or a challenge statement around your house that you could use drones to help, or you can even say, let's say you could map your entire locality, create the stitched map, and then see how the virus is spreading, what is the pattern of spread, and then that way you could try to control it within one location, then not spread it to the entire locality. So all of this are possible. It's just that you will have to sit down with your challenge statement and then see what applications can be put on to the, or what payload can be put onto the drone, and then how you could make it viable. That is there, because this is like more, this looks more like common cold until and unless the entire country develops herd immunity. We will be seeing more of this. So there is always a chance for you to develop something that could really help people stuck in this situation. Now about JMA, why we are doing these webinar series, and then what is really our motive. I started JMA on the 19th of December 2019 with the sole purpose of helping the ecosystem, because there were companies that were producing drones or manufacturing drones. There were companies that were providing drone services, but there was no ecosystem that was helping these companies. They faced problems due to availability of pilots, skilled other skilled workforce, test sites, understanding where they could set up factories, investments, how could they get up their branding, how could they get their branding up, what was the marketing strategy they had to use. All these problems existed because majority of the drone industry, as it's very new, is all in their startup segment, right? Only few, one, two, three companies are established, but majority of them are in the startup phase, and all of them had this problem. So who do they go to, right? Me being in the space for such a long time, I could, speaking to all these companies, could relate to all of their problems, and then we started solving one by one. And then we said, I think this is the best thing to do right now, because if the ecosystem really flourishes, then everybody grows in it, right? That it's like generally when you say the country grows, then automatically the people in the country also benefit from it, correct? That way, with that vision and with that philosophy in mind, I started JMA in 2019, and then initially we started our we continued with our drone pilot training program, providing the industry with trained and skilled pilots to work in various industrial applications. And then we help companies get land for setting up factory. We started talking to colleges and universities to propagate the idea of drone, the startup ecosystem in the drone space, how easy it was to do that, and how universities could become a place to incubate these startups and help them grow. Because we missed the aerospace wave back then, because it was large, because that space required a large amount of capital, which even the government was hesitant back then. But we did make some strides, but we could not grow as big as the US or Europe or any other nation, right? When compared, or any other advanced countries when compared that time. But I did not want the drone ecospace to miss that. And that is why we made sure we would work, JMA would work in all its capacity and ability to create this ecosystem so that everybody could grow and could set up companies, and then that would create many more jobs, and that would be like a domino effect and everybody would benefit. So that was the whole idea. And we've also worked with governments, and Garuda Aerospace was our first experiment where we scaled up a company to very great heights. Next slide. So this is what we do. We do our advanced drone pilot training program. I'll talk to you about that in the next slide. But then the main part is the aerospace consultancy, where we support companies to scale. Their companies have ideas. It's impossible for me to execute all of the idea. It's not possible. That's why I always believe that everybody should take part so that more and more applications come out, and then we have better use cases there. So companies have very good idea, they have very good tech, but then they have problems in every other domain, right? So we help them in one or the other way by providing our consultation services so that they could scale up very rapidly. And we also have a flying field in Bengaluru where most of the RC radio control model hobbyists come and fly, because the foundation of the drone industry is the aero modeling industry. And we try to nurture that hobby by providing our flying field for them to fly, and also helping these drone companies use the flying field as test site. And with the next slide. So in the advanced drone training program, we provide a comprehensive training so that industry does not have to invest its time and money in training freshers. So we build this program around the advice from the industry themselves, and we put in all the requirement that the industry said this is what is minimum required for us to be able to scale very fast. And we build this program around that, where we cover DGCA syllabus, and then we provide 15 hours of simulation, we provide 15 hours of real-time flying, and we also provide soft skill training, We also provide expertise like cinematography, flying for cinematography, for agriculture, for mapping and surveying, right? And because of this, people become readily acceptable in the industry, and then freshers will be able to get in. So this is the entry level position where you could easily get yourself into the drone industry, and then the world is yours. You could work your way up to any other department in the company as well. So this is our program that we run in Bangalore. And then we also have the ability to run this program in various other institutes. We have a mobile team that can come to your university or college and then run it there as well. So this is the program. Next slide. So this is the Drone 100 or the Flight 100 program. So how this works is basically we interview 100 people who would want to be entrepreneurs, and we take them through a 45-day rigorous boot camp where people, established entrepreneurs from the drone industry and from associated industries like legal, marketing, sales, branding, HR, and all of that, they imports and all of them come together and then help you understand what it takes to be a businessman in the drone industry. Because today we might have a very great idea, but then we might lack skills of developing businesses, right? And that way this program is being built to be able to build 100 startups. That's the idea. And be it in India or abroad. And if we could sustain those startups, that would be a really great thing, and that's what we are aiming to do. This program is tentatively set to start off in July, and then you can always sign up for it if you have the time and bandwidth to be part of this program. Next slide. I think we've come to the end as well. So we have that feedback form. Request you, all of you, to fill it so that we may improve on our presentation, as well as you can also let us know if you want to be part of any of our programs or if you require any consultation. We will be more than happy to do that. I would like to end this presentation with a few thoughts. The best time for you to start innovating is when you're in college. Start in the second year or in the third year. Think about problem statements that are affecting a large amount of people, how you could build solutions for that. Today we need more solution providers than sheer businessmen who could build solutions that could help everybody, and then use the advantage of being in college to build your enterprise, because you will get breaks. Nobody is sitting on your head to get a job. You have those time on the weekends. You have time now, since you're all doing online classes. I think lab time is also free. You use all of this time, form a team, 3 or 4 people, build solutions, use drones, use anything you want. But then I would insist, if you really love drones, use drones, build solutions, take it to the government, help the government at this point of time, or help hospitals, help people around you. That way you will have a very strong use case to use once you graduate. The best side of it, you might have a company and might never need a job. The worst case scenario, you have very good experience and then people are lining up to hire you, right? So both case scenarios are best. And that way it's a very nice time to be utilizing your talent, your skill set, your friends and peers to build solutions and build solutions using drones and taking it to help the people of the country. So thank you so much. We have another 15-16 webinars lined up. Follow us on social media platforms so that you will know what are the next topics. All of the topics are different from each other. You can be part of it. All of the webinars are open for the public, even including those universities or colleges who are running those webinars. And fill in the feedback form. There's the certificates there for you to take them away. That will serve as a reminder, and I hope it also serves as an inspiration for you to start building solutions on drones. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patient listening. We can take questions now.
So I have a doubt about drones. In India, it's legal, means they need some license like that number plates for the drone.
In India, drones are legal, but there are certain regulations. Prajwal, you can switch off the slide after a minute or so. So there are regulations that you will have to go through. Initially, you will need a unique authorization number, then your drone will need a UIN, then you will need a unmanned aircraft operator's permit. Your drone will have to be NPNT compliance as a pilot. You will also need a license that is already being provided right now. So all of these framework exists, and post that you can always fly your drones.
So means when we just assemble a drone, purchasing some component and I assemble for testing purposes or studying purposes the drone. So in that case, I also need the means number plate for test that drone.
Yes, according to the current UAS 2021 regulations, even for experimentation, you will need permission. You can write to the Ministry of Civil Aviation through your college or university requesting for permission. Through a university, it happens very fast. And post that, you can start experimenting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think there are certain questions in the chat box. I think there's one. DJI drones are banned in India, correct? So there are multiple Indian drone manufacturers who produce NPNT compliant or DGCA compliant drones. Idea Forge, Throttle, RF unmanned system, purely depends on what you want to actually use. You can always, if it's agriculture, there are a few companies in Delhi. There's IoT Tech who sells agriculture drones. If you want for mapping and survey, you have RF unmanned system, Idea Forge, Asteria Aerospace, and a few others selling drones for that. So it purely depends on what you want. There are multiple companies who are authorized by DGCA to sell drones. You can always look them up.
Sir, means how I can buy the components? Means in outer when we import some components from out China or other country, it's taking some tax. Custom duty is very high amount. Means the component is only 2,000. They charge the tax about 2,000 or more than that. So what means?
So unfortunately, I don't have control over the taxation system in this country.
We can replace the tax. Be like when we show the license or like that, we can.
No, there will not be tax exemption. You will have to pay tax for everything you bring into this country. Okay. So that cannot be done. So there's another question: why are the TV channels not covering all the news and services drone companies are doing in India in a proper way? Unfortunately, I cannot answer that because I do not have idea. But they have done very good coverage even when I was in Uttarakhand, and then the recent drone sanitization and then drone delivery. All of this is being covered. I'm not sure about which channel you're speaking to, but then I'm not in a position to correctly answer that because I do not know. I do not own TV channels. FPV drones, yes, the next big thing in sport is FPV drones. Stadiums are being built across the world. It's becoming very fascinating day in and day out. Now, FPV cinematography is a whole new segment in cinematography where they're using FPV drones to shoot commercials, movies, series, and all of that. Even so, that way, FPV drones have been able to do high-speed chase and all of that. They were also trying to use FPV drones to follow Formula One cars, but then at this point of time, we don't have drones that could carry that kind of good camera and do 300 kilometers an hour. So they're still building on it. Hopefully, we will see that next year.
Sir, and what about Python programming associated with drones? Will it be done on flight controller itself, or is there like a Raspberry Pi platform or something?
So for what do you want to do Python programming? That is the question. You want to build program into the flight controller, then you need to know for what you're doing that. I would need to know for me to answer. Or if you want to build it for a certain separate application, then you cannot build it on the flight controller. You will have to have a separate computer on board. That depends. You want to have the computer on the drone, or you want to have the computer on the ground station. It's purely dependent on how you want to place it, because putting something on the drone means adding weight to it. How you want to do it is left to you. But then it needs particular use case for me to tell. But generally, people don't put it on the flight controller. They have a separate computer that handles all that processing.
So with low kV motors, why we use the larger propellers like 10-inch or more than that?
Please state your name and then ask the question so that I know whom I'm speaking.
Okay, sir. My name is Anshuman, sir.
Yeah.
So my question is why we use the means with a high kV motor like low kV motor like 360 kV or 1000 kV motor with 10-inch probe or bigger than that probe.
Yeah, because lower kV motors produce higher torque.
Yes, sir. I know about that, but
that
can
is why
we
we use larger propellers, because
little 5-inch probes or
you
less
can't
than
use
that?
smaller props on lower kV. You can only use that on higher kV motors, because larger propellers will need a larger torque to turn them, right? Because they are producing enormous thrust. It's basically law of conservation of power. What power goes into the motor, if you consider that some is wasted and all of that, you would need pretty much the same to produce that amount of thrust, correct? So that is why lower kV motors turn larger propellers.
So can you suggest a flight controller
we can
build a
sorry, yeah,
means you can suggest a beginner purposes flight controller for us? Be like,
you can pick up a PixHawk and then you work on it.
Okay, PixHawk APM be like.
Sorry?
So APM?
APM is outdated. You can pick up PixHawk. There are so many modern versions that are.
Yes, sir. Or for starting sir, CC3D how means there is a called
Anshuman, so
CC3D.
what we'll do is this will become a more detailed discussion. You can always contact us on any of the platform, and then we can take it up there. That will be more beneficial, because I think the other people also have questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So the next question from Rajat is, there are a lot of victims under the influence of cyclone. How might a drone help people at a time like this? Will it be an effective solution for scouting? Yes. So what happens is multiple things happen. I was there in Odisha last year when the Ampan cyclone happened, right? So first thing is you create maps of the places, and then that becomes easier for local administration to assess damage. That's one. Second is you can use drones if buildings have collapsed. Then in that case, shortly you can use drones with thermal cameras to find if people are trapped inside. If they are alive, then definitely their body temperature will show up. Third is insurance companies also use drones to assess building damage so that they can pay the claim. So that way, that is also possible. Fourth one is you can use tethered drones with radio communication devices or Wi-Fi devices to restore temporarily the mobile network in that location. So these drones can fly for 5 to 6 hours straight. That way communication will always be there, and then nobody is panicking when you're not picking up the phone, or they're not able to, your relatives or anybody, your near and dear ones, they're not panicking when you're not picking up the phone or something like that. So that is always possible. Any other questions? Harsh climatic conditions definitely affect, this is by Kevin. He asks if harsh climatic conditions affect the functioning of a drone. Definitely yes. Flight time would definitely reduce if there is higher wind speeds. We don't fly during lightning. We don't fly in rain. Visibility is very poor. We definitely don't fly in cyclones. We don't fly in snowfall. These are all problems where flying drones becomes an issue. regarding batteries, yes, hydrogen fuel cell technology is being developed. Then we also have hybrid drones where you have an engine powering a dynamo and then flying, you get a longer flight time. But it's still in the very nascent stages, at least the hydrogen fuel cell technology. So it will have to evolve and it will take some time. But the latest is hydrogen fuel cell and then solid state lithium polymer batteries. So if there's no more questions, we can close for the evening. You can always reach out to us through our social media platform. We always answer the questions there as well. Or you could always write to us at info@janeaerospace.co.in and then we will reply to your mail regarding this. And I would like to thank BMSIT and the Department of Mechanical Engineering and the Aero Club for collaborating and then allowing us to host this event for the students. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank the principal and the HOD for the permissions granted and for the support for the drone industry itself. Thank you so much.
Sir, I would like to propose the vote of thanks now, if you're done.
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. I am Adityan, core team member, Aero Club, and I'm here to present the vote of thanks for today's webinar. Firstly, I would like to thank our webinar speaker, Mr. Leo Peter Charles, for enlightening us with his knowledge. Today's webinar has been insightful for everyone here. In fact, I met Leo sir for the first time in a meeting when he was the CEO of Garuda Aerospace somewhere around November 2020. And since then, every time I've met him or every time I've had a conversation with him, I've learned a lot. Today's webinar has introduced many students to Leo sir, and I hope the feeling's mutual for everybody else too. The webinar has taught us that the drone industry is so versatile that the whole pandemic couldn't hamper its growth and has in turn caused a boom in the drone industry. I would also like to thank Dr. Mohan Babu, Principal, BMSIT, and Dr. Satish Kumar, Head of Department of Mechanical Engineering, BMSIT, for giving permission to organize this webinar session and inviting Professor Madhu, Coordinator Aero Club, to conduct it. I would also like to thank Ms. Kanis Fatima and her team at JMA for hosting this webinar with all of professionalism. I would like to express my gratitude to all the core team members of Aero Club who worked really hard to make this event successful. Also, thank you to all the students present here for paying your attention and learning. With that note, I would like to end my speech here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay home.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.